Welcome back to another episode of the Somatic Business podcast where we talk about all things related to entrepreneurship, embodiment, and spirituality. I just wrapped up super amazing conversation with Daniel Dick, who's a workshop facilitator and coach, especially for men. And yeah, we had a really fascinating conversations around topics like consciousness, weaving in certain business principles, and talking about the space of probabilities, like dreams and ideas that we as entrepreneurs like to hang in a lot, like dreaming big and having big ideas, and then the space of like making things actually happen. Kind of like how can we weave a bridge between those two? How can those two be less of a contradiction and more of something that inspires each other, but also for us to find a way to actually move things forward and not get lost in the world of ideas. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Here's my talk with Daniel Dick. All right, Daniel, take number two after some internet troubles.
Yes.
You, thanks for taking the time for this conversation. Yeah, would you start us off by sharing who you are, what you're up to professionally, and what is it that you love the most about what you do?
Yes. I'm Daniel. I'm coach, workshops, seminars, also gardening. And what I most love of what I do is when I really can see people changing. Really, if you see they were going on one path and they were stuck in that path, and you could make the railways like this,
Mm.
and they can go a better life. And especially if that has so many influences on other people too, because what I get always as a feedback is like, you change maybe one person, but that person changes its whole environment. So when I get the feedback, wow, it's the first time in 17 years that I've been hugging my father.
Mm.
Uh, and the father is becoming a better husband to the mother, stuff like that. Yeah, it's especially the gratitude of the people. I can really make a change for them. And that's what I mostly like. And that can be in workshops, and that can be in one-to-one coachings. And especially after the MENA Festival in Linz, so much good feedback from these guys. And I work as a workshop leader, especially for men. But um, I just stumbled into it because I'm also an author of the book Sex, Masculinity, and God. I was invited by Kada Last to be part of this book where we look deep into the mechanics of masculinity, sexual difference, the gender trouble, the orgasm and death, and how we deal about cheating, what is being better, worse, wounds, psychoanalytical, spiritual, and anthropological, which is where I came from. I've been studying social and cultural anthropology and focusing mainly on consciousness research, system science. And I've been doing this for many years, till about 6 years, when I changed the path to do more practical hands-on work and working with healing and with coaching and with workshops. So my biggest background is knowledge and spirituality from this podcast series. And entrepreneurship was always like more the side boat
Mhm.
and became in the last 6 years one of the main topics, and it's becoming bigger and bigger as a topic itself in my coachings too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool that also you work with people who are on a path of entrepreneurship.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah. That's how I stumbled into it, kind of similarly, actually, because I was working as a men's embodiment and purpose coach, and then just more and more unconventional people started coming to work with me, and obviously that very often includes entrepreneurship of some sorts. Doesn't always have to be full on, but like this desire to do something that is meaningful and
Right.
that, yeah, goes beyond um, trading labor for money. Yeah.
Yes.
And then we have some quite interesting connection points. I'm just gonna name them because yeah, like I like to acknowledge like the relationship that we have because I think it creates context and like a container. So the first one, which is probably the craziest for me, is my sister from
Mhm.
basically like political activism, like you were involved in student protests. How long is it ago? Like 15 years?
Ooh, yes, about 15 years. Yeah.
Yeah, like protesting against the Bologna protests, which was a lot about like homogenizing uh, kind of universities
University.
all over Europe. I mean, on the bright side, to make it easier to kind of study in different places, but obviously also at a lot of costs. And she actually, some years after that, sent me this like, hey, there's this guy who I connected to, and now he's doing men's work or something like this. So that was really interesting for me. And then obviously, like we both have the background in men's work, and I think I like sort of heard your name somewhere before. Then I heard about the book because I've been connected to Kevin Oros, who's the third author of this book. And then a couple of months ago, I sent out a post on Facebook saying like, hey, I'm looking to expand my network of awesome men in or around Vienna who kind of connect to certain topics that I care about. And that was kind of like entrepreneurship, embodiment, men's work. And you were tagged by a shared friend of ours. And we got to meet recently for the first time, which was really fun. Um, and I think one of the things that I'm curious to talk to you about is, or maybe you can bring in a little bit of, because we talked a lot about consciousness when we hung out, and you shared a little bit about your journey of like things that you've already created kind of in this realm. So maybe could you fill us in there? Like what were your um maybe like first what drew you to this exploration of consciousness, and then what were the kind of projects and things like that that you've been involved in?
Hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, my exploration of consciousness was deeply intertwined with the curiosity to make sense of the world, to make sense of my life, to make sense of life itself, which was very triggered by the suicide of my father.
Mm.
And so, what is the meaning of life? What's the meaning of my life? Was like the major driver when I finished school. So I went out for traveling, doing ayahuasca, San Pedro, and Reiki initiation, and all that stuff to get deeper into that knowledge. And we have one visitor that always loves to intervene too. And because I had so many experiences that I had to make sense again after this journey, I became very interested in religion and consciousness research. And during that time was also that occupation of the university, this protest, which was a major learning process also for me to make this link also to your sister and this connection, because in this occupation, I figured out that if everybody could do what he really wants, then it's a matter of communication and organization to make it happen.
Hmm.
And people would just work for free because they wouldn't need to get paid for it as in a normal labor, because they would do anyways what they wanted. The only thing that we needed was food and shelter, which we organized us by ourselves in the university, you know, because we were living in the university and eating because we were organizing all the food and the cooks. So both things together, this curiosity of making sense of life, which I could find many answers in religion, consciousness, spirituality, philosophy too, and the way of taking will and action and organization together led to organize the Academy of Vienna of Consciousness Research, and later on the Institute of Existential Consciousness Research in Berlin. And these were about altogether, I think, 5 or 6 years of immense gathering of knowledge, but also self-discoveries and self-exploration of consciousness, which yeah, which culminated ultimately into a psychosis, but also an opening up into too many facets of my unconscious, of the unconscious, which I had to work through very hardly through healing and insight and healing and insight and energy work, which I then figured out, oh, I can do this not only for myself, but also for other people.
Hmm.
And this was the switch where I had enough to know from all the workshops, conferences, from consciousness research, where the knowledge that was there had to be embodied. I had to go also not only on the head, but also through the heart, through the hands to other people. And that's where I'm at. Long story.
Long story long, that's where you are.
Yeah.
I love this phrase, long story long. It's so good. Yeah, cool. There are already a lot of threads we could go on. Maybe one thing that I'll name is we can also tie to entrepreneurship nicely, I think, is one of my um, criticisms of political activism is that very often it does not feel embodied to me. And there's a very strong outward focus.
Mm.
And often either an unwillingness or an inability to include the inner realms and how that affects how I look at things and how I behave.
Mm.
And then obviously like political activism can be a way of acting out something that maybe has more to do with myself and like my inner dynamics and relationships than the outer world. And then I think it just becomes highly ineffective. Like I have
Mm.
conversations with friends about climate activism. And I also want to say, I think these things are changing, and there are definitely people in these fields who are aware of this. I think it's just not yet mainstream to understand the relationship between my inner world and wanting to change stuff on the outside. And obviously, there's a super clear bridge to entrepreneurship as well, that I think if I'm not aware what drives my desire to impact the world, but also to generate wealth for myself, like if I'm not aware where this is coming from, um, it will likely cause ripple effects that are consciously undesired,
Mm.
that
Mm.
are um, like where at some point I will realize I was looking for something through those behaviors that are actually something completely different. Like, I don't know, something
Mm.
like recognition from a father figure, uh, wanting to feel like I am valuable or good enough, or yeah, I'm curious if you have other examples of how this can show up, because I imagine that this also comes up in the work that you do with people.
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, there was long time a very big divide between spiritual people
Mm,
and political
mm,
activist people. In the last 5 years, you could find like more gray zones in between, where spiritual people were really more inclined to act through the law of nature, more in political activism sphere. And on the other hand, that spiritual activists would that they either would burn out or they would like feel very frustrated that things were not actually working well. Especially the left in Austria was very frustrated that there's almost nothing left of left, and they would either be becoming more conservative or going into emotional dark places, and by that searching for help sometimes in ayahuasca or in also more spiritual things. So this is how this in between plays kind of like develop what I could see. But especially if you have too much, I'm against this, I'm against this, I'm against that, you know. I could see that there was often a puberty that was not actually put into place because there was no father making you taking limits, you
mm,
know, putting your limits. And so you yourself were still looking for boundaries to cross, misbehaving till someone is hitting you, you know. And this is something that I could observe, not only by myself, but also by others.
mm,
And if that attitude of only being against is not turned into, but what is it that I want? Puberty is actually not lived. You know, puberty is actually a place where you learn to protest and rebel against authority figures, and by that you discern what they want and what you want.
mm.
You know, and
For a second. Wait, you're frozen again. There you are.
I see.
Is it okay if I jump in for a second?
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, just because like there's one parallel that I see in the kind of entrepreneurship scene that I find interesting, especially spiritual entrepreneur, but not only, but let's say more spiritual entrepreneurship. This kind of like limitless possibilities. This kind of like everything is possible.
Mm.
Um,
But nothing is.
say again.
But nothing is done.
Oh, I mean something different actually. I mean more like this. Um, I mean, I guess to some degree, this like becoming disconnected from humility and from, yeah, like seeing the value in limitations or something like that. Like just like
Mm.
going all out and nothing can hold me back and boom. And obviously like there's something healthy in this of like, boom, I'm going for what I want. But when I sense into it, it often doesn't feel integrated. And I think what it can create is these, I guess that's maybe what you were pointing to, like these sandcastles of like, I'm starting at zero and I'm gonna hit my first 100K year this year. And because like my mindset and blah, 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 like I believe in myself. And there's like a disconnect from everything around me. It's just like me, myself, and I'm just going for it.
Mm. Yeah. That's what I call the probability space of the quantum wave.
Mhm.
It's like everything could be, but it's not. Uh,
Love it.
very,
Yeah.
very shocked, because in the probability space, it's really easy to be everything. And you can do this with your mind,
Mm.
but you can't do this with your body
Yeah.
or with material things.
Yeah. And I think the place where I see people getting stuck is obviously like highly improbable things can happen. Like you can have like a skyrocket success, but it's probably not something that you will be able to repeat very often or teach to other people.
Mm.
But then like to set these super high expectations and then feel disappointed whenever you don't have this incredible success, it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I have found actually a lot of inspiration there in Stoic philosophy, also through some of my business mentors, to be more like to prepare for the worst and be open for better outcomes. And I think
Mm.
there's a mind fuck sometimes, especially for spiritual people, when it comes to like positive thinking and affirmations and like, oh, don't focus on the negative. Um,
Mm.
that I think is misleading. I think it's very healthy to uh, prepare for not so good outcomes and still be open and not like be stuck in it, but just be like, okay, I know what I can do if shit hits the fan. And if things go better, great. I mean,
Yeah.
awesome. But I don't depend on things going amazingly well for me to keep on moving forward. I think that's the main thing. Where there's a
Mm.
disconnect from body and groundedness and like, I don't know, like natural movement of life that comes at its own pace, where it's not
Yeah.
all in my power.
Some people call this shit happens.
Yeah,
Be aware of it. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's very true what you say. And this is where you become like more strategic.
exactly.
uh, because the probability space, it's like the dreamer, you know, and from the dreamer, you have to be limitless for that space.
Yep.
But if you want to actualize something, you have to put it into time and space. So that's where you become strategic, and you say, okay, this has to be done at that time, at this place. This is when you put out your calendar. You know, this is when things becoming more real.
Yeah.
When you put out your calendar, this is like the practical tool.
Yeah.
You know? And this is where you begin to think about strategies, scenarios, not anymore a vision, but scenarios.
Mm.
It's something that, okay, this can happen if I go that stream, this can happen if I go that stream, and this can happen if I go that stream. These are still probability spaces, but they have anchor points.
Mhm.
And these anchor points, you might call them milestones. If you reach that point, you go that way. If you reach that point, you go that way. And if you put them into the calendar, they become more and more real in time and space. You know? That would be like a hands-on thing where you can step out of this. Everything is possible because your time is limited. You know? And this is something that you figure out if you fill up your calendar.
Yep. Yeah. And to add to that, something that I've been practicing a lot, and I think I've become pretty good at, is to eliminate things from my calendar that are not helping me actually move forward.
Mm.
And I would say that's almost harder than like filling it. Or I guess it
Yes.
depends on your personality and where you're at. But I think for people who are already, you know, they're on their path, their business is running, I think actually making sure that when you put energy and resources into something, it's actually helping you move in the right direction. That's
Mm.
that's like the even higher skill. And um,
Yes.
there's a nice bridge there to the spiritual realm, which I think one of the reasons why people are not good at that is because we're afraid of the unknown. Like we're afraid of leaving some empty space and face the fact that we don't know what will happen then. But like from a business perspective, this is like one thing that I've learned from one of my mentors, Nick Peterson, is if my schedule and if my energy is already fully spent or like delegated to different places or allocated rather, I will not be able to benefit from random things coming my way because I have no way to respond. Like I'm already full. Whereas on the flip side, if I always leave some space in my work life, then I can actually
Mm.
respond to random things coming my way that I would have never been able to anticipate. They're completely outside of my control, but they might be an opportunity to like completely reach a new level in my business. And this component of like the way that I look at it is like when you build your business, the way that you put in the work, it's like a very linear thing. Like you sort of make sure that you do like 1% better each day, something like this. You keep on going. But then to have like these exponential moments, there's always an element of randomness there. Like you cannot engineer these moments. You can be ready when they come and take the opportunity,
Yeah.
but they're not in your control. So I would say like if you want to start getting things done, put them in your calendar. And if your calendar
Mm.
is getting full, eliminate the things that are not serving you and be really radical in that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Like rather have lots of empty space than doing stuff that actually is you just moving in circles and you just doing something to feel like you're doing something.
Mm. Right. Right. And I also had to think about it was the father of a former girlfriend and a good friend, actually, the brother of the girlfriend. The father was CEO, one of the big CEOs of BMW. And he said something that always stuck in my mind is the luck is for the ones that are prepared for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the luck is something that you said, it's random, but you have to be prepared for it
Yeah.
to actually be able to receive it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this part is a balance of itself, but also the balance between the open space that you give yourself of possibilities to the concentrated space
Hmm.
to act on one thing
Yes.
and not burst your energy. It's the balance that you have on your side, what you can take charge of, to the other balance of let space to the universe let you help and
Yes.
be surprised by what is coming. It's like one balance in yourself and the other balance with your environment.
Yeah, and so for example, if I love this stuff, like if you only wait for great things to happen, you're not in a position to really benefit from them because then you depend on them coming. Like you're in a place of like, fuck, something needs to happen. Like life needs to throw something at me so that I can finally, do something. That's not the position we want to be in. Like I want to be in a place where I could keep on going and keep on doing my stuff and gradually improve and I would be fine. But I keep enough space for something to like just completely catapult me to new dimensions. So yeah, I agree. It's like um the way that I like to talk about this is like if you look at entrepreneurship like betting, like everything is
Mm,
a bet. There's never nothing is guaranteed. It's always like, as you said, like probabilities. So
mm,
there are some things I can do in my business where it's it's like it's quite clear that the time and effort that I put in is sort of equal to the outcome that I get. And it's kind of like more of a linear thing of like, okay, I put like, for example, it could also be like a side job that you have, and I know, okay, this amount of hours I put in, this amount of money I get. It's quite reliable, it's stable. There's not much risk in it because it's always going to be kind of similar, but there's also not a lot of upside. Like it's always going to
mm,
be kind of the same. And then on the other side, I have like the high risk, high reward kind of things where if it's like, well, if this goes well, I can grow into completely different spheres. But it could also just not work at all. Like it's a low probability thing, maybe you would say.
yeah.
And so I think one of the risks that we like if you have like a very entrepreneurial mind is like to only play in these like high risk, high reward things. And so that's not sustainable because it would be like you win one time and you lose 10 times. And if you're not prepared to lose 10 times, then you're not going to be able to like stay in the game. You're just going to crash and whatever, go bankrupt or burn out or something like this. So
Mm,
this is actually inspired by Seneca and Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I think he translated some like a concept from Seneca. He calls it the barbell strategy. And the two things I just
mhm,
described are like the two things we want to balance. And we don't want to play in the middle. Like we don't want to be in the place where it's like it's not really reliable, it's not really
mhm,
predictable, but it like
yeah.
the risk is a bit higher, but there's no high potential
Mm,
reward. It's kind of like a stupid in between
yeah.
thing. So like how can I push everything that I do in one of two places?
I would have a name for these two places,
Mm-hmm.
which is also very philosophical. One is playing with Chronos, and the other one is playing with Kairos.
Hmm.
Chronos is the god of time,
Mm-hmm.
which is a linear concept of time.
Mm-hmm.
And Kairos is when things take place in time. When Kairos hits, it's like when things come together in time and place.
Mm-hmm.
Chronos is like this continuous movement of time.
Yeah.
So the Chronos is playing with the stable income that, or the stable workload that is going on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Kairos is the one that says, now luck hits you.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Could be a nice worksheet for business. Here's you got Kronos. What do you do for him?
Yep.
Here's you got Kairos.
Yep.
What are you doing for him to please him?
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful. Like it. So put out your sheets, right on the left, Kronos, and on the right, Kairos. What are you doing for both of them?
Yeah. And yeah, maybe to add, if you resonate with Kronos and Kairos, put that there, or just put something like stable, predictable, and high reward on the other side, something like this. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I do with clients, is to kind of like audit the different things that they're working on and be like, okay, where is that? And usually it's like everything is somewhat like in the middle, and then to be like, okay, can we make this like a stable thing, and can we this make like a um, high reward thing where the business does not depend on it going well, so that I can continue. So like if I have nothing on the stable side, then it's almost like everything has to work out well for me to, like I have this so often, like people work on 5 different projects, and if they look at like their income and so on, it's like they all have to go well for their business to succeed. And that's just not a good place to be in, because it's very likely that not all of them are going to go well.
Yeah. And especially the field of coaching, of healing, and all that stuff. You don't want to send out the energy, I need you to survive.
Yes.
You know, you want to be at a place where you are actually giving, you know, where you can say, hey, I'm here, and if you need help, I'm fine. You know, this is very, very important, especially in that niche of healing where you have to have a good mindset for yourself to be able to help actually someone else.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I'm aware of the time, Kronos.
Yes. Kronos is going on.
Kronos is going on, and our appointments as well. Um, but yeah, let's bookmark this conversation here, and I would love to do a follow-up.
Let's do that.
Nice. Yeah, thank you
40
for
minutes is a very good tight
say it again.
time. 40 minutes sounds like you're on a good tight time frame where people can step in
Yes.
and take Kronos for
Hey,
on the side.
thank you so much, Daniel.
Thank you, David.